Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another podcast session at Yovna, the Ageless with Scott. Scott is in the natural wellness industry for years and years, and he's doing some amazing work. He's working on brain health. I mean, a lot of health educators are working on body health, but uh, Scott's area of research and what he does is more on the mind side. So this is what our conversation is going to be, and this is going to be an interesting conversation because we'll be talking about plants and mind. So Scott, welcome on the show, and thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you,
Let me
Deepti.
just introduce you first, and then we'll start with the session. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Scott is a lifelong student of natural wellness and longevity. He spent years traveling around the globe in his 20s and then came back to attend and graduate as a macrobiotic consultant from the Kushi Institute in 1985. He has written a few books on diet, disease, and health connection, and has sold over 90,000 copies. He started manufacturing his own wellness products 20 years ago, and his first brain tonic beverage sold in every Whole Foods and 1,400 other natural health food stores across the US and Europe. He's been a keynote speaker at conferences in Russia and the US. He's 66 and he is the owner of Synaptic Scientific, a nutraceutical company that creates a high potency brain tonic and medicinal mushroom mix. So, Scott, my first question to you: how you are associated with the wellness industry? How did your focus shift from body to the mind, and gradually moving on to having your own company that creates products for the mind?
Mm. Uh, well, it was watching people, and I was mortified by what was happening in my own country. And I've always been interested in mental wellness, not so much from the depression and anxiety, because I didn't really experience that much in my own life. It was more I saw from my own personal experience writing books, is that there were certain plants that really helped me focus and stay motivated. And I was really fascinated by that. The the kind of the branch into creating formulas like that was seeing what was happening in my own culture around the way I thought basically people are losing their minds. And I saw that mental health, depression, anxiety, ADHD, including motivation and concentration and clear, level-headed thinking, can be profoundly helped through plant-based cognitive enhancing formulas. And actually, Deepti, this is why I love talking to you, because a lot of those plants historically came out of the Ayurvedic tradition. They were plants that were grown in that area in Southeast Asia, some in Africa, some in the other places, but it was really the Ayurvedic tradition that captured those plants and understood the role they were playing in helping the mind and the brain think clearly. So that was really the motivating factor, was watching in horror as you know there were a couple things actually here in America, and I don't know how broad your audience is, but so I can only give you some American numbers.
Mhm.
14 million Americans currently use amphetamines every single day, legal amphetamines, pharmaceuticals, to
Wow.
deal with brain fog and concentration. 14 million. There's another 37 million, around 18. That represents about 18% of the adult population. And so I presume your listening audience
That's incredible.
use antidepressants. So I believe absolutely that there is a correlation between those numbers and those wrong tools and what those tools are doing, those pharmaceuticals are doing to people's thinking. There's a correlation between that and this increase in overreactivity, black and white thinking, gross generalizations, prejudice, loss of language accuracy in every level, from the what we're listening to on TV to daily conversations, argumentative thinking instead of thoughtful thinking, divisive aggressiveness, and then ultimately, and this is what's really growing in my own country, is what is now being considered cult-like behavior or cult-like thinking. And I
Yeah.
believe all of that is a loss of neuroplasticity, what they're calling neuroplasticity, which is your ability to deal with conflicting ideas, multiple concepts, multiple opinions, and being able to stay centered and find out and stay in communication. And I think that was largely being caused not only by what people are eating, but, and this is where it really drives me, the wrong tools. Those pharmaceutical tools
Mm,
are
yeah.
not actually nourishing the brain and repairing the brain. They're tweaking the brain. And to me, one of the keys then is to use these plants that have been given to us by nature to start to unwind the brain's problems, and because it actually does that, it can really change and nourish the brain back to a more centered place, to a more healthy tissue.
Yeah, so many questions I have just with the introduction of yours. So,
Sorry.
but no, no, that's perfectly okay. I mean, but I would really want to that gives me another perception that the mental conditions that you just talked about, like the extreme ones, like depression, anxiety, and ADHD, which actually culminate as a part of cognitive issues over years. I mean, anxiety would not happen in a day, but somewhere some cognition issues would start happen to you, and that would just continue, and from there something else will happen. And I mean, I guess it's a journey rather than saying that anxiety just happened to me. It doesn't work like that, right?
Correct. Anxiety doesn't just happen. It's often at times the accumulation of things and that inability to get yourself back to balance. Because every human being on the planet experiences anxiety. If you've ever been in a near automobile
Yeah.
accident, that's called anxiety. If you've ever, dealt with a child or a friend who gets into an accident or gets hurt, or you've ever had pressure because if you don't pass this test, if you don't do that job, everyone
Yeah.
experiences that.
There is something at
That
the back going on.
there's this. Pardon me.
There's something at the back going on all the time, which culminates into
Well,
anxiety or mental
well,
conditions.
even if you are completely a balanced human being, you're going to experience those things. It's part of being human. The key is what happens after that. Are you able to find balance again? Are you able to the next morning after a good night's sleep or a couple of days of rest, or speaking to friends or getting a new perspective on the situation? Are you able to find yourself into homeostasis again, or are you now at a higher level where you've got this now ongoing level of anxiety and depression? That's where it gets dangerous. And so, what these plants allow you to do is bring yourself back to balance.
So, Scott, help me understand, like the numbers that you just shared with us, the
Yeah,
US numbers of the people, high on these wrong tools, as you just
wrong
mentioned.
tools.
How many people are actually, like, going, I'm not asking about the statistics, but a general, your own observation about how many people are actually aware that they have these cognitive issues, which can, culminate gradually into all these mental conditions. Because if it is a progression, then I believe if we use these plants that we'll be talking about in the session right now, these plants have this capability of gradually bringing you back to balance if you include them in your daily routine as a like we include the foods, and then
Correct.
you don't reach a peak where all these conditions become extreme. So but some level of awareness is needed, where somebody says, okay, maybe say for example somebody has this argumentative nature. So somebody people have to realize that this argumentative nature is not human nature. I mean, there is something, cognition
Off.
not working. Yeah.
Correct.
So but what is that level of awareness? I guess that's a bigger gap than people realizing that they have any kind of mental or emotional concern. So the problem starts really from the back, rather than saying that I have anxiety or depression or whatever, and starts with cognitive issues. But that level of awareness in the people is not there. So, it's, I believe that's a big gap. What's your take on that?
Oh, it is a big gap, and you're basically you're saying, I know, how do we fix this? Because it
Yeah,
requires not just the consumption of these plants that help; it's also the awareness of what's going
yeah,
on. And
exactly.
uh, I'm fascinated by books and documentaries on cults. There's actually recently one on Netflix about a church in Utah that was kind of based on, well, it doesn't matter which one it was based on, but it
Hmm.
was a very strong cult, and it became world news, at least in the U.S.
Hmm.
About what was happening with the women and children mainly. And so they're interviewing these people who got out. And one of the things that they all seem to say is that when you're in it and you're surrounded by people who think this way, it's very, very difficult to get out because you have to take yourself out and go, is this true? Is this really the way the world works? Are these ideas true? Are they true to me? And sure enough, it took. Sometimes it takes them years to get out. Well, I think the same thing is happening. That if you for people who think largely in black and white, us versus them, that kind of thinking, it's a hard thing to get out because you're surrounded by people who generally think that same way. You're listening to
Yeah,
media who generally thinks that same way.
yeah.
So you're asking a very big question. How do you affect it? And my wife and I actually just had this conversation over breakfast this morning. All you can do is help one person at a time. Do
Yeah.
one more talk like this, do one more podcast so that it reaches people to get them to go, huh, I hadn't thought about that. So that's the only that's the only way I can do it.
Yeah, no, and then I guess the session really helps in a way because, we are trying to create that awareness that there is a way out. Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a big thing because a lot of people stuck in that mentality do not even realize there's a way out.
No.
So, yeah. Okay. So, Scott, my next question is, after all these years of working with plant medicine that you have been, and also associated with the foods and being into the wellness industry and teaching people about the power of plants to heal, what is the most surprising or uncommon thing that you've come across?
That people don't believe in the power of plants to heal. I think that's it. I think
That's
the general perception is I always say it's like mint tea. They hear mint calms the nervous system or something, and they're drinking this weak mint tea and go, yeah, this is like fairyland. This is like twigs and leaves, and then the other one that drives me batty is that it's unscientific. I love science. I love facts. I love proof. I love it. I love that model. And where I think its shortcoming in is that and this is what really gets me, is until it comes from the high priestesses of science, people oftentimes won't
yeah,
make a choice. So they say, well, until my doctor describes to me Bacopa Monieri at a 40 to 1 potency, what you're saying is bullshit. And you just think, don't you realize you are a walking petri dish? We are all a walking experiment. We've got to take this into our own hands. But again, that's part of the way clear thinking works, is to
yeah,
realize we are in control of our health more than any of the experts in which we are leaning on for their advice. You've got to make these choices. You and I are great examples. There's no way in hell we would have ever gotten to where we are in our health had we waited around for the high priestesses of whatever model of health that we're waiting. We would still be waiting. And so a lot of the things that I studied back in the 70s and 80s where people thought they were kooky are now commonplace. And I would say to any listener, you've got to start taking this into your own hands. And so that's it. And the other thing, an aspect of that people think plant medicine is not strong. The way I always prove it to them is I say, you come over to my house, I'm going to put a rice seed, like 1 grain of rice amount of Celestris paniculatus, which is just a plant that's actually from a seed. They call it black oil. They call it black oil. I'll just put that much underneath your tongue and let's continue talking. It's impossible to not notice the effect in your head. You start to get the feeling like your eyes are brighter, you can think clearer. And for those who can't come to my house and don't even know how to pronounce the Latin word of the plant that I just said, if you've ever drunk coffee, what do you think is going on? That is classic plant medicine. And there are dozens of highly effective plants on the same vein as the coffee bean that are out there, and they're not actually caffeinated. They have different effects on the brain, and some of the science now is showing that it actually is some of these plants taken at least 30 to 60 days clear up brain plaque. Brain plaque, as we are now all learning, is one of the main reasons why people get cognitive decline in their later years. So these are out there, and you just have to access these plants at a high enough potency to get their effect.
And I guess you just rightly said, because while you were saying this, I was just correlating this to how in India Ayurveda has been there for years, and a lot of medications, some of the ones which are proven, and some maybe which are in the process of being proven in future, or coming months or years. This wisdom has always been there, and it's been passed on to us as a part of our generation. Like, I'll give an example, like tulsi. Okay,
Tulsi.
Tulsi, yeah.
Yeah.
So that used to be a household plant in every house up till a few years ago, and there was a simple remedy. Elders used to, take this 5-6 leaves of tulsi in most of the Indian households, and they used to start their first day with tulsi. And I mean, there was no reason, as in to justify why they're doing it. But over years, when I studied and I realized how strong adaptogen it is. So there is some wisdom coming on in everyday things that we had been doing in the past, which we have stopped doing. And somewhere, I think it's definitely impacting us, not just the body but the mind part as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Tulsi. Tulsi, for those who don't live in India, is also known as holy basil. And holy basil, the Latin term is Ocimum sanctum. I think that's one of the coolest names in the world. Listen what the phrase is: Ocimum sanctum. Sanctum means sacred, and one of the effects that they're seeing that, by the way, Ocimum sanctum, your Tulsi, is in my cognition formula. We put it in
Wow.
there. And by the way, I didn't just create this I actually hired an extraordinary botanist. He's got a double PhD. He works with pharmaceutical companies. He's born and raised in India. He comes from a long line of Ayurvedic practitioners, and his understanding of plant medicine is second to none. And when he was describing to me Tulsi, and also known as Ocimum sanctum, he said, Scott, it's what opens up the top of the head to intuition. And when I take it, that's my sense, is that however that works, however intuition works, and whatever is at the top of my head, I don't know all of the mechanics behind the brain,
Chakras, so
but
that's
I
how it
can
is.
feel that sense of I am not just thinking on my own. I'm able to have that sense of what are the best decisions I should do here? What are,
Mhm.
that the way intuition works. So that's fascinating that they used to have it. And did you take the leaves and put it into tea, or was it placed into
Yeah, so that I mean, even I used to use it for quite a long time till the time I had that plant at home. Now I don't have it, but yeah, it was used multiple ways. Like if you have cold issues or sinus issues, then you used to use honey with ginger and having some tulsi leaves in, or starting your day with tulsi. My mom still does it. She takes some leaves of tulsi and she adds it to a cup of tea every
Oh,
morning.
now I
And
want to
I
now I want to meet your mom now.
Oh,
I'm going to
please
come over.
definitely come over. Please come over.
Oh, I would love it.
So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so there's a lot of that ancient wisdom, definitely, in Indian households. And I am not very sure if that's the reason, but she's a very calm lady. She's very, very calm. And of course,
God.
some wisdom definitely coming in from her age also, but some remedies which are coming in as a part of our tradition, following those 4 years, starting the day in a specific way, living day as per the circadian rhythm, following all of these, and that could be a contributing factor, that that calmness and that stability of mind is there. So definitely I believe these herbs and plants do have a very strong effect on
Yeah,
the
and
mind.
another. This is so extraordinary. I so love talking to you, Deepti. You're really doing an extraordinary job. Of
Thank you so
educating
much.
people and helping pass this on. So I'm very, very grateful for your platform. One of the things, going back to my frustration and what pulls out my hair is I'm surrounded by people who, like I say, until it comes from my doctor, meaning my high priest, I won't listen to any of this because it's all just twigs and leaves and tulsi,
Mhm.
growing on my windowsill. What I love about that story with Tulsi and your mom is I use the example of vitamin C. Back even like 150 years ago, they were really mystified by why, when we would send out a ship full of sailors on a boat, most of them would come back and their teeth was going, their joints were hurting, they would get really,
Mhm.
really sick, and it took them a long time and lost hundreds of thousands of lives, and they could not figure it out. And then finally, they did figure it out, and it was this compound found in particular set of plants. It's plants, folks. It's plants called, and we call it vitamin C, which now gives it this really scientific
Mm.
meaning to it. And like,
Look and
okay,
feel.
vitamin C. Without that vitamin C, we would not have collagen. Our teeth fall out. Nothing works in the body. And it's the same thing when if you were completely void of vitamin C and laying sick, it takes a few days. It takes maybe a month. All of a sudden, that daily dose of vitamin C starts to repair the cells and you start to regenerate. And it is the exact identical thing with these cognitive enhancing herbs and compounds, especially again, if they are concentrated enough, you start to feel that change happening in days and weeks and in a month.
Amazing. I mean, okay. So as we move on, of course, there's a lot that to speak to you, but I'll go by the sequence of questions that I have. So now another food for thought, like plant medicine for the body has been quite common, but plant medicine for the mind is quite uncommon. Even though, like, you and I know, maybe a fraction of it we know, but we know that plant medicine does work for the mind. So why do you think that plant medicine till now has only been researched or worked on more for the body and not for the mind? Like, what could be the probable reason?
Yeah, part of it is education. We just don't know. In other words, people don't aren't familiar with those plants. We're familiar with protein because it changes our body. We're
Mm,
familiar with vitamin C because there's a history behind it. But believe me, once the high priestesses, I say that, please, I'm joking and I'm not being
yeah.
overly critical of the medical system. But so once people with MD after their name and PhD start to talk about their own experiences, you will see people in droves go and find these plants because now it's acceptable, now it's
Mm,
proven
yeah.
to them. So that's really what's happening. I think the other thing too is that we're at a stage in our human condition where we no longer need your mother's leaves off of the bush. We need concentrated help because
Yeah.
we're in such a bad state, at least here in the States, that you need the plant extraction technology that allows those people who understand botany that well and extract it out, and then it comes down into 1,000% higher than in that pill because our condition is acute. We are in deep, deep trouble, and so we need very high doses of that. Now, I will just say this: we've already done that with the realm of vitamins. If you go sit outside,
Yeah.
you can get some vitamin D. Some people are so screwed up and so missing those things that they need to take those concentrated forms of those plant medicines and eat the amount in a pill that would take months of eating whatever foods have vitamin D in them, cod liver oil or something like that. You need to hit 50, 100 times, 200 times pills so that the body can then recover. It's the same thing, That's why vitamin C come in 1,000 milligrams now, because people know I need a lot of that, given the stress, given the condition of that we're in. So that's also what's going to help too. And those plant technologies, extraction technologies, are now there. In fact, we in Cognition, we're using a company in your country. It's outside of Mumbai. Do I say Mumbai right?
Yes, that's right.
Mumbai,
Mumbai.
Mumbai. When
Mumbai.
they say it with such a beautiful accent that I always think I'm screwing it up.
No,
Mumbai.
no, it's all good.
It's beautiful. And so they're using this thing called supercritical fluid extraction, which is I just love the science in it. They're able to drive the temperature down. They're using CO2 basically, and then they're using pressure. And what you end up with, you take 100 pounds of some of these plants like, Centella asiatica, and what comes out the other end is 1 pound. So you're getting this 100-to-1 extraction. And man, the results from that kind of concentration are really what we need right now in our current state.
Yeah, and that makes so much of a sense. If we look at how for the body, this specifically this area of functional medicine, which is bringing about a lot of revolution in the area of introducing supplements and these antioxidant supplements and these vitamin supplements, mineral supplements in higher doses.
That's right.
So and I'm wondering if such concentrated forms can be used for the mind as well, which are
That's
the
right.
plant extracts that you're talking about.
That's
And
right.
that can have an indirect impact on the body as well, right? Because when your cognition is working fine, your body system is working fine. All the internal systems are in balance, and the body automatically stays in balance.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And these plants have much more effect than just the cells in the brain. It's not like they just go directly to the brain. They just are able to cross that blood-brain barrier and do the work they need to do in the brain.
Yeah.
How, the biomechanics of that are beyond my understanding. I think they're beyond everyone's understanding at this point, but they do affect, the entire system.
Wow, amazing. So, okay. So, do you think cognition enhancing plant medicine has an impact on, I don't know if should I be saying reversing or at least stabilizing these
Without a
mental
doubt.
conditions like depression, anxiety, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ADHD, none.
Yeah. Now, what the list you just gave has quite a range there, because depression,
Yeah.
you can get someone out of depression oftentimes within a matter of minutes. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
interesting things you can do that. Parkinson's, that's a little harder. That's a very much
Yeah.
long-standing condition.
Right.
So, but the answer is it helps the brain function better. And one of the things I love now that they're starting to talk about that we studied back in the 70s and 80s is we were one of the main things we understood when you learn about natural health and natural foods is the whole idea of detoxification. And to this day, there's still plenty of groups that just laugh at the idea that you can detoxify the body, or that the body even needs to detoxify. Great. That we won't even argue that anymore. But what I love now is that there is a term, and I always get the term wrong, but it's senescence, I think is what it is. Basically, it's the acknowledgement that of cell death. So
Okay.
we all know that our cells don't last, from the moment we're born until the moment we die. That all types of cells have a life cycle. Some as short as 10 days, the cells that line the intestines. Every 10 days, all that is replaced. Bones are the longest. They take like 7 years to replace. The liver, 90 days, 120 days. Same thing with red blood cells. They only last 90 days, and then they're dead. They're gone. And then new ones are regenerated. Well, the whole interesting thing is what happens to that dead material? What happens to that necrotic material? The dead bodies. I mean, what do you do with all that? How does the body get rid of that? And that whole science is now being cracked open and acknowledged. Well, one of the cool things about these plants that they're showing in studies is that it speeds up the ability to get rid of those subpar tissue, that subpar cells, as they're able to flush that out. And it is in that flushing out that there is a big, strong understanding of why the brain starts to think clearer when you are daily using these cognitive enhancing plants. And again, the science is that it is able to remove all of that and then get it out so that the new baby cells and the new
Yeah.
regenerated cells are breathing clear, have clear running water, and bloodstream coming through it, and suddenly the brain can suddenly see and be clear. And that is the experience many of us feel when we take these cells. Which, by the way, the other interesting, I think we probably are, this may be another whole nother topic, but the other one that's really the science behind it is the mushrooms. When people take medicinal mushrooms, I really think the mycelium of certain fungi help do that better than almost anything else. It allows you to remove all the dead tissue in the brain so that the brain can think clear.
On this topic of detoxification, that's incredible information, but my mind is just stuck on that thought of detoxification. I really want to create an awareness on this from the ancient perspective, what do yoga and Ayurveda science has to say about it. So very interestingly, when I was learning yoga, uh, how should you be starting your day before your practice, consuming maybe some ginger tea, having some tulsi leaves in the morning along with some black pepper. There's a science behind it. What you're just trying to enhance your circulation by having all these plant-based herbs. And when you get into a yoga practice, which is about an hour, 1.5 hour long practice, what you're doing is, because of that enhanced circulation, and when you're getting into that movement, your body is automatically getting into that detoxification mode, and through sweat, it's taking out all those toxins. And once your body is clear of those toxins, once you're done with the practice, you immediately feel that rush of energy and positivity in the mind, and you're ready for the day. So it's so correlated with what you're saying. My mind is just going back to what ancient sciences have to say about what science is saying right now.
Yeah, I think one of the cool pictures that occur to me when I do yoga is a sponge that's being
Oh
squeezed.
yeah, yes.
Because that's when you are in, and I don't know, and I never remember any of the terms, but when you are in,
Spinal
that
twist,
twist,
spinal
you
twist.
are squeezing those organs gently. It's not like taking
Yeah,
like a rag, but it's like that squeezing and then releasing, and that squeezing and releasing. And
exactly.
anyone who's ever held a dirty t-shirt underwater or a sponge and you've done that squeezing, you realize you are cleansing the cells of the t-shirt, you're cleansing the cells of the sponge, and what you're left with is a higher operating device,
System.
thing,
Yes.
tissue.
Exactly, and that's where the plant medicine also has a role to play, because these plant medicine then, kind of, because of its different energetic effects, help support this entire process of squeezing and then, getting back into shape.
That's right.
So it's, I guess it's as simple as that.
I guess it's simple. God, I hope it's simple. Yeah, it's complex and it's simple. You know, the
Yeah.
other thing, the other corollary to that is that if those organs of elimination aren't clean themselves, all of that dirty water, all of that, you know, those that what you just cleansed from all those organs now has to go through those sieves, those filters, those natural means. And if they themselves are dealing with their own necrotic, you know, replacement program,
Yeah.
and they're having the foods that are not conducive to good movement in the body, then all of a sudden that gets trapped, and then you've got problems with one particular. You know, where's the bottleneck? Is what I'm always thinking. Where's the bottleneck in the body? Is
Mm,
everything flowing, or is there one spot where it's not doing well?
exactly.
Love it.
Okay. Great. So, Scott, now if we look at the functioning of the mind, and it's very deeply to do with feel good hormones, right?
Yes.
Specific hormones make us feel a certain way. So, do these cognitive plant extracts have an impact on the hormones as well? Because it's chemically, it's those hormones which will make you feel a certain way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And the first thing I like to say when we dive into hormones is that it's a very complex field of study, and even the top people in the field acknowledge we barely understand. We're only beginning to tap into
Mm,
exactly what all these particular hormones affect, and the levels that they affect. It's not just one or two things. So what I'm about to say is a very simple model of the entirety of it. But what I will say is just this: if the answer is yes, and
mhm,
anyone listening to that can experience that themselves in about an hour's time. Now, I'm going to give you one great example. Anybody on the planet right now, believe it or not, has access to a African seed called Graphonia simplicifolia. That is never an easy one to remember. Graphonia simplicifolia, and unfortunately, it does not have a simple,
name.
name to it like Tulsi. You know, it has.
Mhm,
That's what it is called. But what's cool about that plant in particular is that out of the 400,000 plants in the entire Earth,
mhm,
biosphere, it has the ability, it has the precursors to serotonin higher than any other plant on the plant kingdom. And by eating that plant, you will get the precursors to, it's actually called 5-HT.
mhm,
5-HT metabolizes into 5-HTP. 5-HTP is basically the serotonin of the body. And when you eat 5-HTP or the extracts of that Graphonia simplicifolia, it is undeniable for most people that they don't feel happier. You know, serotonin is the feel good
yeah.
hormone in the body. And I know that there are people out there that study hormones are rolling their eyes going, that's awfully simplistic. Well, it is, but it for this purpose here, people can understand the impact that plant medicine can have simply by doing that. And I mean, I take it every day. My wife takes it every day. I have friends in South Africa who started taking it. Well, he gave it to his wife, or his wife found out, and now she is much, much easier to live with, he says.
Is that a part of your cognition?
It is. It is
Oh, wow.
in the formula. Yeah, and in
Wow.
fact, it's in the formula in Graphonia simplicifolia, not the extract. So what we have seen is that if you can give the body what's not bioidentical, it's where the body recognizable, biorecognizable forms. It goes,
Mhm,
yeah, we know what to do with this. Thank you very much. And it then turns it into serotonin, which floods the body, which gives you that feel good sense. And for those who may not understand what I'm talking about, is if you wake up in the morning and going, wow, today's going to be a great day. I can work on the projects and my life and the things I'm doing. If you've got that gusto, chances are your body has that flood of feel good hormones called serotonin. And if you do not, if you wake up with dread, you wake up with like, life is not worth it, then you need to experience what that feels like. And one of the fascinating things that I didn't know about until like a year ago, serotonin naturally metamorphoses. I'm sorry, I'm using a more of a spiritual term, but what's the scientific term? I forget, but it moves, it breaks down into melatonin. If the sun
Oh, wow.
goes down, the serotonin in the body goes, it's time, and it morphs into melatonin. And melatonin, of course, is one of those things that make you sleep well
Good
at
sleep.
night. It relaxes you. And sure enough, people that take a Graphonia simplicifolia report that their sleep is better, which is odd because it makes you feel good during the day, but then it also allows you, once the sun goes down, the lights get dimmed, you sleep better as well. So heck yeah, heck yeah.
That's
Hormones
amazing.
hormones are affected by what we are eating, specifically plant medicine.
Nice. Great. So much to absorb.
It
Okay.
is. It is.
Yeah. Okay. Scott, my next question is, a lot of understanding about plant medicine for the mind is already there in Ayurveda, yeah. And even you're tapping the power of Ayurveda to come up with your
Yeah.
specifically the cognition product. So, which Ayurveda cognitive boosting plants or compounds or have a positive impact on a variety of mental functions? I mean, uh, you know, or the other way, my question is like, what are some of the common herbs or plants that a person should be using as a part of their dietary practice every single day to make sure that the cognitive function is working well?
Yeah. Not to sound like a salesperson, but we put all 8 of them into cognition. All 8 of them
That
went
I
into
am
it.
going to check out that definitely for sure. And along with cognition, what else?
Yeah. Yeah. Along with cognition, what else is affect?
Mm,
You mean what else does it affect besides cognition? Or
yeah, I
no,
mean,
what other plants are
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Okay, well,
Should be a
some,
part of daily life.
yeah, Bacopa monieri is another really, really good one. Bacopa, also just
Is
Bacopa.
there a
Have
simple
people,
name for that?
I wish there were. I wish there was.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there isn't. Maybe there is, but I just have never found
Mhm.
it. Actually, I think Bacopa might be known as. Oh, I bet you one of your listeners is going to type something in, and tell us what it is. I can't remember. Another was Celestris paniculata. I know. This is why this is so hard when I do these. People have to see the words and then go research it and go buy that
Mhm.
particular thing. Centella asiatica is a really good one, and I forget what Centella is. Centella is known as. It's another. That's a fairly common one. I'll bet you your mom
Mhm.
has it in her garden. Okay, here's another cool one, and this is really good because it goes back to the hormones. There's one called Mucuna pruriens. Mucuna pruriens is also known as velvet bean. Velvet bean, I think, started growing in Africa, but now it grows in Southeast Asia. It grows in India because of the health benefits and the chemical compounds found in it. Mucuna pruriens has the highest amount of L-DOPA, or a precursor
Mm.
to L-DOPA. And of course, L-DOPA turns into dopamine. And dopamine, in a very simplistic way, it is the hormone that allows you to look at a project that is going to take longer than 2 seconds and go, the pain and the work involved in getting that is worth it. It's the driving force behind
Mm.
our drive to go out and do
Doing.
something that make the doing something. Yeah, it's the reward. That's it. It's the reward hormone that you can't wait to what it feels like to have gotten that or to accomplish that. So it's a very important one, especially for people dealing with depression or anxiety, because it's the thing that drives you and me to
Yeah.
go out and do things, even
Do
if they're
things.
hard. So that's another one. Makuna is powerful that way, and yeah, that's all I'll say about
And
that
that's
one.
also a part of cognition.
You bet it is. You bet. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, Scott, I have another question, which would be, I think, a very common question amongst all of the listeners. Like, when we say a cognition enhancing herb or a product, and when we say drug therapy, okay,
Yeah.
what is the difference? This is for somebody who doesn't understand, like, how cognition enhancing products work, and how, drugs for anxiety or all these mental issues work. So, for such people, it could be one and the same thing. But how would you want to differentiate the two?
Yeah. One nourishes the body to health. The others have a tendency to tweak it, which is why oftentimes pharmaceutical drugs come with a long list of side effects and precautions, because they're very well aware that they are tweaking something in the body. They're very rarely a nutrient that is like a vitamin C, like a protein, like something that's filled with minerals, that is filled with ingredients that the body needs to. What they are skilled at doing very well is blocking things or tweaking organs to pull out certain things, or changing the chemistry inside of things. And at this point, I have to say, this I'm not anti-medicine. I went through shoulder surgery a year ago, and the amount of pharmaceuticals needed for that to work, for them to
Mm-hmm.
put me out so that they could what? Crack open my bones and do things that, had I been awake, I couldn't have handled. I would have screamed and, run
Yeah.
away. And then also just what it takes for them to do that work to prevent the blood clotting and so forth. So this is not anti-pharmaceutical. It's saying there's a right tool for the job. So
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals are phenomenal at saving your life and getting you out of danger, plucking you away from death, preventing you from dying or really, really breaking down,
Extreme conditions.
extreme conditions. But as soon as you're out of that, you want to start nourishing your body to your best ability. And this is what this whole podcast is about, is learning that there may be solutions out there that Mother Nature is dying to give you. They are here for a reason. And if we can learn to find those and tap into those, and all of a sudden you start to feel better by nourishing yourself through what you're putting into your mouth, instead of paying a prescription for a pill that is the wrong tool past that initial stage of the problem.
And I can just add on here, like, having gone through these, phases of emotional, mental issues in the past, and coming over, controlling all of that, and being here where I am right now. The feeling of feel good and the feeling of feeling lively and living is missing when you are on the drug therapy for mental conditions.
Yes.
But feeling of being lively and actually living and enjoy that joy factor only happens when your mind is supplied with what it needs to be nourished well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a very subtle aspect, but this is what I noticed in my own healing journey, that somewhere on a drug therapy, you are alive, but then that lively factor is not there, which is there when
Yeah.
your mind is well
Yeah.
nourished.
Yeah. That's really, really important. That is the distinction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Amen.
So,
Mm.
Scott, tell us something about cognition now. Like, we've talked about how plant extracts work and importance of plant medicine, but How did you come up with cognition, and what exactly is the job of cognition? How can it help people?
Yeah. It really came about during the pandemic, and over the last 6 years of my own country, we saw our country torn apart by this divisive behavior that had been probably simmering under the surface for all these years, and then suddenly it had a chance to come out, and it just reminded me so much. This is a bit dramatic, but I'm a history buff, and it did remind me a lot of Germany pre World War II. That feeling like people were behaving like mad people. They really were, and they were building audiences because of the technology of the internet, and because of just all the tech that is out there. They were building these bigger and bigger audiences, and these very mentally vulnerable to this kind of rhetoric were suddenly being pulled in, and it was giving them a sense of power. It was false power, but it was mortifying to see, just horrifying. It was really, really scary. I thought, there's no way in my country. We're a very intelligent, we're ultimately a very good, group of people, based on a really good fundamentals, and we learned very quickly that that's not true anymore. And answering that question, like, how did this happen? That's the conclusion I came to, is that we've slowly poisoned ourselves to the point where we've lost our minds. So that was really the impulse behind creating cognition. As you mentioned, when we first started, I created what's called a nootropic. A nootropic is a fancy word for cognitive enhancing substance or plant and so forth. We created a nootrope back in 2007 and 8 that sold in every Whole Food store. We had, $500,000 orders coming from the Ukraine. It was really, really cool. But it also wasn't that strong. And that was the biggest mistake I made. So I called my Ayurvedic friend, the doctor who was actually immigrating to the States at the time. And I said, I have this idea. I want to create the world's most potent nootropic cognition formula. And he was so delightful. He just said, in his wonderful accent, he just said, I have just the things for you, and the technology is now where we can do it. So that's really what the impulse behind it was to create the strongest one. And I will say this, that cognition is a very bitter formula. It's a liquid. It comes in 4 ounces, and it's bitter. It's when you put it in your mouth, it winces. It's got some flavoring. We put in some citrus, and we put in a little bit of this and that. It's still very bitter medicine. So, but that's the nature of those plants, is that when you extract out the active compounds, you're working with alkaloids, and alkaloids by their very chemical structure cause a very bitter reaction in the mouth. So, but that was the impulse behind it, and we put in kind of the kitchen sink of everything. But it was great because Dr. J was actually great. We're basically building a chord structure, like a musical chord, that you have to have that really high note, and that's the osmum sanctum, the holy basil, the tulsi. That's the highest note. And then you're building on that so that it's kind of hitting all of the notes and affecting all of the complexity of the brain and the mind. And so that's what it is. We've got 7 Ayurvedic plants, many of which I've mentioned. And then we also put in one that's called aglyceryl phosphorcholine, or if you just want to call it choline. Choline is really it's the gasoline of the neural. What am I trying to say? It's the main ingredient to getting the brain functioning. It's like the gas. It's like sugar to the bloodstream, and so choline is the last one, and that's really not an Ayurvedic compound. That's just it's kind of like a vitamin extracted from citrus. that's what we have because we need that big punch behind all of the rest of it to kind of encapsulate it. And that's it. Those are the, 8 ingredients, and there's no caffeine, there's no stimulants. It's an important distinction. None of this is a stimulant. It doesn't tweak the body. It nourishes the body. It gives it the precursors to the ingredients that it needs to function well. And yeah, it's phenomenal. It's my proudest achievement. It really is. Yeah, and it's 4 ounces. It lasts a long time. It lasts about 6 weeks. It's $79 on our website, but if you buy 2 bottles, because it lowers our shipping, it drops the price to $59, which is very reasonable. Our margins are not that high. I was just working on the Excel spreadsheet today because we need to order again, and so yeah, that's it. And we actually want to come out with a gel cap. There's a company that now creates a vegan gel cap. Up till now, they've all been beef based.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to and a lot of people are okay with that, but enough aren't. And so I want to get a gel cap version so that kids can start taking it easier. Plenty of kids
That
already
was
take
my
it.
next question. Who can take it?
Yeah,
Who all can take it?
everybody can take it. They're nutrients. It's like asking, who can take vitamin C, who
Vitamins
can
and
do it.
minerals.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know,
Wow.
yeah,
Great. My order definitely is coming, as I told
yeah.
you in a
Okay.
conversation also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we ship worldwide. And we actually subsidize the shipping. We charge $28, but if people, that's no matter how much people order, because it does oftentimes isn't so much the weight, it's just shipping the dang thing. That's what costs us. So, yeah,
And what is the dose like? How is one? And for
small.
for the kids as well as for the adults, is it the same
Yeah,
dose?
each it comes in a pump, and it's quite
Okay.
thick and kind of has the consistency of like a milkshake, like it's kind of thick,
Okay.
and two small squirts.
Sprays. Okay.
Pumps is
Okay.
generally good, but I'll do 7, 8, 10, at a time. But most people 2 to 4, 2 to 6, and then you can vary it because it's not a stimulant. You can take it in the morning and take it at noon. You can try it maybe at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone is different, so you have to
Okay.
play around with your own internal chemistry with it. And some people get away with just one pump. That's why it can last for some people 2 months or even
Okay.
longer. Me, I go through a bottle easily in a month. That's enough. But I'm a big guy. I'm 6'8", 204 centimeters. I'm a giant.
But mind wise, you're very stable. So I think it should last you longer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm one of those guys. I like the big doses of things. It's just in my nature. I always get this feeling like I'm doing my
Mm-hmm.
body really good. It's the same thing with the mushrooms. I take so many mushrooms, probably much more than I actually need, but I like that idea because I'm into longevity. I want to see, can I last till 105? I don't know. That's that idea.
No, that this mushroom thing actually recently started in India also. Like one of my friends started her own farm, and she started doing these. I don't remember what kind of mushrooms, but yeah, she gave me these big red mushrooms, like very hardy and very woody kind of a
Oh,
mushroom. What was it?
Ganoderma lucidum. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lingji.
but there's a
Rishi or lingji. It's the same word.
uh,
Rishi.
reishi mushroom. Reishi
Reishi.
mushroom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
reishi.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
So
the
I
that.
still have that. I still have that. So what she told me was, and she did some research into that. She just told me to take a small piece out of it, and it's very hardy. So you really need to boil it in water for a few
Yeah,
hours, and take a
yeah.
big pan and just make a until that it becomes a concoction, which is like about say 1/8 or something, and just store it and just have 1 teaspoon added with water every single day.
That's
And
it.
she experienced amazing changes. Like she had a black pigmentation on her forehead for years. Like she tried all derma solutions and did a lot of stuff and all that. Then she started mushrooms, and she did not knew she because she was into that business. She started it, and I guess within a month or so after taking this dose of reishi mushroom extract that she made at home, her forehead was all clear. I mean, that was the visible effect on the face, but I'm sure something definitely must be going on inside the body as well.
That's the coolest part, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
see something change on your skin or your eyes or your face,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to go, what is
That's a big
happening
motivator. Yeah.
in my liver? What's happening in my
Mm.
kidneys for
Mm.
that? The end result, you know? I mean, the amount of chemistry that's going on. Oh, I can tell you stories of people peeling off moles every day. These are people with a lot of moles and, you know, skin
Mhm.
tags and so forth. They Scott,
Mhm.
here's 4 more
Yeah.
from taking the mushrooms. Yeah, it's, to me, it's one of the best things for clear skin is a daily dose of medicinal mushrooms. And wow, that is all right. Now I got to come to India.
Definitely. Please come over. No, you just have a month's time to come.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, Scott, last few questions. What are the changes that a person can experience once they start taking cognition, and how quick the results are?
Yeah, that's what's kind of cool about the formula is that there's some aspects of cognition that people report changes like in 30 minutes. Like
Mhm.
suddenly they feel on, they feel like they can get focused, and people can read some of the testimonials. We only post, 5% of the stories we get on our website, but people will say, I am in the zone. I'm able to
Mhm.
work clear. And then the longer term ones is I just feel more alive, or I feel better, or my sleeping is better. So that's the range. I don't know. We've only been selling this since September.
Mhm.
So the long-term
Okay.
effects of all this, over time that's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, maybe I'll give you some results there.
There you go. Yeah.
Something,
Let me
yeah.
know.
Okay, definitely. Okay, so Scott, now since we are talking about plant extracts that
Yeah.
have immediate effect on mood and focus, what are some of the suggestions that you would want to give to the listeners?
Well, I think, instead of giving them like what to take, because we've already kind of talked about those things, I
Mhm.
just think if people can start to ponder some of the bigger macro ideas of what we've talked about. And the main one is that idea that mental health, depression, anxiety, ADHD, motivation, focus, concentration, and most importantly in this time, clear, level headed thinking versus cult thinking can be profoundly helped through nutrition. And when I say nutrition, I mean specifically those group of plants that we don't talk about in our Western culture, in our modern culture. Those, they're not hidden, but they're hidden to us, that have a definitive result on cognition. We're already familiar with a couple of them, green tea, and coffee. We already know that there are plants out there that help us with our mind. Well, there's more of them. Start to learn about them, read about them, study the science, study again, don't wait for what? Your doctor, for CNN to tell you? Go out and start to experience, just like your friend. Look at that. Had she waited for what? The local hospital or the local group to say, we found out that reishi mushroom can clear this forehead discoloration, she would be dead. Instead, she
Yeah,
just
and she just
read.
discovered by chance because she was doing it and it happened. And I mean, so the same story like I had, I started on to this and then I realized, okay, yes, this works. And this is
Yeah,
the only thing that works.
it's the only thing that works. Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes
yeah.
sense. We have to work with Mother Nature. We have to. And that's the other cool thing is that once you get that kind of healing, it throws you. It just go, "Oh my God, how come how?" It just puts you into that sense of wonder, and it just naturally makes you a better thinker. It does.
Do I join science with spirituality?
Pardon me?
Do I join whatever you've just mentioned, the scientific part of it, with spirituality? Okay, so I'm just asking you, do I co-join that?
co-join.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is, whatever that you've just mentioned, there's an alternate thought going on in my mind, which is coming in from the learnings and philosophy of yoga. Okay, till now we had just been talking about Ayurveda. Okay, the plant extracts and all of that. Now yoga and Ayurveda are sister sciences. So Ayurveda approach works on the body. Of course, the kind of foods that it recommends, they do have an indirect impact on the mind, and very strong impact on the mind, with all these plant foods that we're talking about. But there's a very interesting yoga guru, Paramhans Yogananda. Do read about him. uh, so this person, this yoga guru, actually has emphasized a lot on the science of self-realization, precisely a very scientific approach of realizing your best potential. Okay, and this is very correlative term with what we are trying to say, enhancing your cognitive abilities. Only when your cognitive abilities are to a level where you are a clear thinker, you know your direction, you know your purpose of life, is where you just keep going without getting deviated by what's coming in, by this or somebody telling you this or media telling you this, and you're living at the peak of who you can be. So this entire science on the spiritual side has been covered by Paramhans Yogananda, who has a specific approach and a way of living, which teaches you how to realize your best potential. And in that approach, he also covers this science or energy of foods. So energy of foods is an inherent part of this entire approach that he talks about. And so he talks about these common foods only, but he talks them from the perspective of how do they have an impact on the mind. Say, for example, apples or bananas, or these regular foods. But science talks about these many nutrients, these many vitamins, minerals, and all of that. In his approach, he will say, apple, this kind of energy; banana, this kind of energy. Your mind will behave this way. Your mind will behave this way. So it's a very, I mean, it's so interesting to see that what science is saying, yoga and Ayurveda have already in some way actually proven all of that. It already exists. So I was just creating that awareness. So that yeah.
I
Okay.
definitely think that all of that changes people's sense of their place in the universe. And if that term is called spirituality, it definitely affects one's sense of awe and the mystery of the
Yeah.
universe, without a doubt. It's very difficult not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So, Scott, my last question is, what are some of the things, rules and guidelines that you've learned or picked up in your practice over years, and which have actually stood the test of time and crucial to longevity?
Wow. Well, I think the underlying one is the notion of cleansing, detoxification. I think that is in my awareness every day. I know it's in my wife's awareness. We talk, it's not like we talk about it, but we're just aware. Keep all of the channels flowing, keep
Mhm.
things moving. Where are things stuck? And why would they be stuck? And using nutrition, using water, using good sleep. I love the science coming out now about how in good sleep, the that wave that comes up the spine to remove the metabolic waste of the past day's brain, that's phenomenal to me.
Mhm.
I love that they're now proving that. So that's probably the number one thing. Number two, I think, is that when I have a pain in my body, when I have something going wrong, I oftentimes can associate it with some food that I am eating that no longer works for me. And one of the biggest places where that is difficult to see is if it's a food that seems to work for most people, but boy, it just doesn't work for my
Yeah.
body for somehow. And anyone who's ever dealt with allergies or something like that know that. I've got a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
If since birth. If she even smells peanuts, she can go into anaphylactic shock, if that's the right word. It's
Yeah.
such a negative reaction. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of foods, hundreds of foods like that, that cause pain in the joints, cause, swelling in the face or the arms or the joints. And you've got to become aware of those. And that's,
Yeah.
as I get older, that's probably the most interesting exploration, to go, what? I woke up and my third joint on my left ring finger, or right ring finger, suddenly hurts.
Mm.
Why is that? And sure enough, I look back and, I have to change something that in the past I used to be able to eat and now I can't eat. So I guess those are those are the things I would leave people with to think
Yeah,
about.
and I guess you've just said that right, because in my practice, when I realized that even though there is a level of awareness, either it's coming from maybe media, or if I'm creating that awareness, or if it is coming from any third source also, even though people know about it, they're still in denial. I mean, they know it's not working for them, but habitually, or out of taste or out of habit, they ought to have it. I mean, it takes quite a long time for them to actually sink that feeling in, that okay, this is not working for me, even if it's maybe, the media comes and says, or you read it somewhere, or it's good, but it may not be good for you.
That's right. That's right. That's the hardest part, is when
Yeah.
everyone else says this is good for you. Well, maybe for most people, but it's not working for me. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Great, Scott. It was really nice talking to you, and it is
Pleasure.
always nice talking to you. I mean, I have so many questions when you're there. There is some, um, I just very deeply correlate with what you're doing, and how we communicate. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for being there,
Oh,
and just help the listeners know where they can contact you, and if they would want to know more about cognition, where they can, kind of.
yeah. Go to our website, synapticscientific.com.
So I'll just post that on the chat, and it
Okay.
will be available for the people who are listening to the podcast later as well. You can tell them. I am just writing down
Yeah.
the website name.
There, I just posted the link as well, the Synaptic
Okay.
Scientific. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, go there, and if they go to the contact us, I'll see that message. So if they've got questions or want to talk about anything that we've covered here, um, I'm not so busy that I won't respond. I'll respond to everybody.
Perfect. So is there any inquiry section, maybe on your website, where if somebody wants to know more about how it works? Because I guess it's a new upcoming area, at least in India. There is a level of education we need before we realize that okay, there is something called cognition enhancing stuff. So
You bet. The whole
somebody to
website.
educate.
Yeah, there's videos. There's where we haven't yet put up the science, the science section, and the reason for
Mhm.
that is legal. One of the, at least in
Yeah.
our country, you have to walk a very fine line between describing to people what the science is and then being told that you are practicing medicine.
Yeah,
So
I
it's a
understand
very
that.
fine line, and we always say that we're not doing any of that, and these are just herbs and compounds, and you have to try them out
Mhm.
for yourself.
Perfect. Great. So thank you so much, Scott. Anything that you would want to say before we end up the session?
No, just thanks very much, and I mean that about coming over. I want to
Thank you
meet
so
you
much.
in
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Definitely, I am hoping to meet you someday for sure.
Yeah, and I
Great.
think my wife would. Well, you've interviewed my wife.
Yes.
Oh,
I
that's
would I would love
right.
to have her again.
Yeah,
Love
that'd
it.
be great. Oh,
Yeah.
we got to come
Yeah.
over. We got to come over.
Please come over.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Okay.
nice talking to you.
You
Perfect.
too.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Yeah. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.